this opportunity just to welcome everyone here. Don't mean to interrupt your conversation after everybody's through. We would like to welcome everyone to Emporia Greensville, and we say that because our committee is one. So oddly enough, I live in the city, but also am chairman of the Greensville County Democratic Committee. So we like to say Emporia Greensville Democratic Committees. But we function as one, and we function pretty well, actually. And we thank you for being here. We know it was kind of a late notice for us to get it out to you, but we know hundreds of other people wanted to come, but they couldn't make it because they had a little something else to do. But they promised me they would be at the polls, Governor Kane, so I'm giving you that promise right now. Hundreds of thousands is what I've heard, at least from this area, anyway. Would just like to take this moment to acknowledge the other chairs that are in the room. My name is George Morrison. Again, I'm the chairman of the Emporia Greensville Democratic Committees. We have with us Dr. Phyllis Tolliver from Sussex County, our neighbor to the north and east. Dr. Tolliver, wave.
All right, all right.
We have Debbie Eldridge. Did I get the name right? And that's Mecklenburg County.
All right.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. And we have Mr. Mark Finney. Mark got there. I'd like to offer a word of special thanks to one person who has been most helpful in getting this together. As a matter of fact, she's been my prod and the driving force to help me get all this together because it's a little hard to keep work and community stuff together. So, Celine, where are you? Celine, wave. None of this probably would have gotten done. She's vacuumed the floor. She's got she's done a little bit of everything. So, Celine, thank you from the bottom of our heart because we couldn't do it, but thank you for coming from Brunswick to help us. We appreciate it. And I'd like to now recognize the elected officials in the room, and I see one at this time, and that's the Honorable Rufus E. Tyler, Chairman of the Board of Supervisors in Sussex County. Woo! Louder, please. That's my boss. Just a little one more time. Thank you, Mr. Tyler. And then our other elected official in the room, and that's his lovely wife, Delegate Rosalind Tyler. Delegate Tyler. Let me just take a moment to throw in a commercial here. This is one of the hardest working people in the General Assembly that I have ever met. And I've met some, I can tell you. But this is one of the better ones. Thank goodness she's on our side. And I appreciate everything she does. And Sussex County appreciates everything you do. And all of your localities in your district, especially Emporia, Greensville, and Brunswick, and all the rest of us, are most appreciative for everything that you do and are doing and will do for us in the future. And God willing, we'll see you again in another 2 years in the same position. Absolutely. And now, at this time, I'll allow you to come and please introduce Governor Kane.
Hey, Rosalind.
Thank you, George. It's just a pleasure just to be here with everyone this afternoon. And we want to, of course, welcome Governor Kane to Southside Virginia.
All right, all right.
Well, we want to just thank all the parties and everybody to come together this afternoon because he's beginning to kick off his campaign, running for, of course, the Senate of Virginia. And we look forward to victory in November.
Yeah.
Well, let me just introduce a little bit about Governor Kane. He didn't give me no repertoire or resume or anything like that. So I have to speak about what I actually know about him. Well, when I first ran for office in 2005, I ran on the ballot with Governor Kane. And along with him, he was very, very instrumental in my race. And we worked collaboratively in Southside Virginia. And, of course, we know that he became the next governor of Virginia. But during that time, we had a wonderful working relationship in Richmond. As you can see, right here. He gave me legislation to carry. And here, I signed my first bill at the Virginia General Assembly. That I carried for the Virginia National Guard because he was adamant about the Virginia National Guard, And we signed this bill so once they went abroad to fight in Iraq, that when they came back, they had an opportunity to be hired at their same place of employment as they did initially. And that was a great deal that we carried for the National Guard. But along with that, he had his wonderful wife, Ann Holton. Of course, we all know her as our First Lady, and Governor Holton's daughter. He has, what was your?
Three.
Three. Three children. And of course, now he teaches. Still teaches at the University of Richmond.
I sure do.
Yeah, he still teaches at the university. And one thing that I loved about him, when President Obama first came and announced his candidacy, our governor of Virginia gave the first endorsement. So, but he's been a wonderful governor. He's been working with the Democratic Party, not only when he's governor, first when he came also governor, but also as Democratic chairman of the National Committee, and now back as running for the Senate of Virginia. So he's a person. He loves to sing. Did you know that? So President Obama is not the only one who can sing.
All right.
But he loves to sing and he loves people. And I tell you, he's a person who is very, very caring. And up in Richmond, we're dealing now with a lot of mean-spirited individuals. But he's not a governor who has been that at all. And just a few little announcements, and I'm going to pat myself on the back.
All right.
This weekend, well, not this weekend, but Thursday, Mark? Wasn't it Thursday?
Yes.
We had the big announcement that Dominion Power is coming to Brunswick
With the gang.
County.
Yeah.
We are so happy to finally get some job opportunities back in Brunswick County with Dominion Power. And they're estimated to bring $3 to $6 million tax revenue to Brunswick County. And that is going to be excellent. That's going to be excellent. But with no further ado, I want to introduce you to the next Senator of Virginia.
All right.
Hey, thank you all very much. It is what a my heart's really full just to be here with friends, and it's probably a little full too because I have done 2 long days of campaigning, and I'm going to get to go home and be with my wife tonight, and I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited to be here with Rosalind. As she says, we came in together in 2005. I know you remember that day. It was a very rainy inauguration, but it was a beautiful one in Williamsburg. And I echo what George said about Rosalind. She is a very hard worker. And to have a husband who is on the Board of Supervisors, who works just as hard, in addition to being a good legislator, she's a physical therapist. You know, healthcare issues are pretty important, but we don't have a lot of people in the General Assembly, 140 elected members of the House and Senate. We don't have a lot of people who work in the healthcare area and who really know it from experience. And Rosalind and I worked on healthcare-related bills together, as well as the Virginia Guard bill. And it was just always a treat to work together. And we've done fun events together here, too. I passed the park downtown with the sort of open awning. I don't know what the park is named, but it's right next to the river. I remember doing events together with you then. And what is it, Veterans Park? And I think I have some pictures with some of you in the audience from when I was there before. And it was real nice. But it's good to be back. And it's good to be back on the battlefield as a candidate. You know, when I left being governor, my wife Ann and I, we had loved 16 and a half years in elected office. But we thought we were on to a different, phase of life. Because there's other things to do too, besides politics. So I was teaching. The president had asked me to be chairman of the National Party, which I was glad to do. I know what it's like to get arm twisted to be party chair. I know what it's like to be arm twisted to be party chair, and I said I would do it because I think so highly of him. I was thrilled to work for him in 2008 and help him get elected in Virginia. And I hope everybody feels as good as I do about working to make sure he gets reelected in 2012. We're going to make that happen right here. But Jim Webb, who was a senior senator when he announced a year ago that he wasn't running for the Senate, it was a little bit of a challenge because we really had kind of decided to move on and do some different things. And I wasn't originally sure. In fact, I was originally quite sure that I would not run. But sometimes your plan isn't the plan, and sometimes your own to-do list isn't really the to-do list. And as I wrestled with the thought about the race, I just realized it wasn't a time for the country and Commonwealth where people know how to do things should stand on the sideline. I know how to run races and win them. I've run 7 and I've won 7, and I've never won by much, but I do know how to get in tough, challenging races, and this is going to be a tough and challenging one, and I know how to win. You win by being upbeat and optimistic. You win by telling people what it is you're going to do. You respond if you need to, but you don't let the doom and gloom and the negativity and the pessimism of the other side drag you down. You stay on with your own message about what you're going to do. And that's what we're going to need to win this race. The other side's already put a lot of money up on TV with negative ads against me. They've over $1 million of negative ads. Now, they haven't moved the polls at all. The race is still tied, which is great. But it kind of lets you know what we're up against. But I really believe one of the great things about our party, the Democratic Party, and I'm going to be making a play for independent votes and for Republican votes too, and I already got independents and Republican folks on board. But one of the great things about our party is that we tend to run on what we want to do, our optimistic view of the future, what are the things we can do to improve quality of life. Sometimes we see from the other side sort of a who are we mad at or who are we afraid of kind of campaigns, but we're really running on the positive. And that's good because we got a great nation. We're optimistic, can-do people. Even in a challenging time, we know we can do better. We know there are bright days ahead. So after thinking about it and talking to my wife, and Rosalind knows my wife Ann very well, she's every bit the public servant I am, if not more, we decided let's get in this race. Let's lay out a vision. Let's reflect on lessons that we've learned in Virginia in 16 and a half years in public office and try to take them to Washington. So I'm going to tell you what I want to do if I get elected. And I think that the happiest senators are senators who tend to specialize and really focus on a couple of things. You have to be well prepared and have a great staff, and I do, who can inform you about everything. But I think the senators like Mark Warner right now, he's really picking the nation's fiscal challenges as his area of expertise. So I'll tell you what I want to focus on. I want to focus on a really simple thing, talent. When I was a kid and I used to go to church and hear most years preach the parable of the talents, that wonderful parable about the master giving talent, was an old-timey word for coins, to servants and challenging them to take their talents and really do something with them. And you remember the story ends, the master that turns the coins into more is rewarded, and the one that just kind of keeps what he has and doesn't do anything with them gets a pretty stiff lecture from the master. So this notion of talent, we all have talent. Every one of us have talent. And our talents are different. But we're all required, motivated, encouraged to make the most out of them that we can. I'm really into talent because I think talent is what it takes for a community, a commonwealth, a country to be successful. Virginia tells us that story. Nationally, we're having a problem. We're losing the talent we're actually to other countries. And let me just take a minute to talk to you about it. And I'm so happy to talk about it with some young Democrats. So we've got some St. Paul's talent here. Give a round of applause for our St. Paul. Oh, right here. Okay, right in front of me. And this is a story that's about young people heavily, but it's also about creating the opportunities that we all need. Virginia was not a state that cared all that much about talent in some ways, because in the lifetimes of us in the room, we know the story. Schools were being closed down rather than letting kids learn together if their skin colors were different. And it's funny when we tell that story now, and my father-in-law, Linwood Holton, when he was governor, was the governor that really said, we got to get over this segregated schooling and let all kids learn together. But when we tell that story, it's often a story about segregation, but it's also a story about education. It shows that we didn't really value education much. If we would close schools down rather than integrate them, it was because not only did we have some attitudes about race that thankfully we put behind us, but also we didn't really value education that much. Another story that's kind of an interesting one, we didn't let women go to the University of Virginia until 1972, and some of our state universities even later than that. So here's what that meant. We didn't, as a state, and look, other states are doing the same thing, wasn't just Virginia. We didn't want people to achieve everything they could achieve based on the talent that they had. It was like we were holding people back instead of saying, here are your talents, now do what you can with them. When Virginia started to change, when we set aside the childish ways and set aside the old patterns and then opened up opportunities, so it didn't matter what your skin color was in terms of where you went to school, it didn't matter if you were a man or a woman in terms of getting into college. We also had in Virginia another challenge. If you lived in rural Virginia, we didn't start building community colleges in Virginia until the mid-1960s. So if you lived in rural Virginia and you didn't happen to have a four-year college nearby, you'd have to drive sometimes 5-6 hours to get to anywhere where you could get some education after you finished high school. We had an economy that, for a long time, a high school degree was good enough, but the world was changing, and in a lot of the world, and for a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunities, we had to have more education in order to be successful. Virginia embraced that, and it was Democrats and Republicans like my father-in-law, it was businesses and government, local and state government, and when we embraced talent, broke the barriers down, built the community colleges, started to really allow people to be all they could be, our state started to change. And in my lifetime, our state has gone from one of the poorest states in the country, bottom quarter in terms of median income, to top 10 median income. That's pretty interesting because no state has moved as far as Virginia has. Now we know that opportunities aren't the same in Fairfax as they are in Richmond, as they are in Chincoteague, as they are in Halifax, as they are in Greenville, as they are in Shenandoah or Wise County. Opportunities are different all over the state. And so some parts of the state do better and some parts of the states have more challenges. And what a great week it was to have that announcement about that natural gas fired energy facility in Brunswick. It's great to have those kinds of opportunities here. I've been doing a lot of events in Southside over the last couple of days where some of the opportunities have been harder because manufacturing jobs went to other countries, and yet there are opportunities coming back, and Virginia's doing better than most states. Our unemployment rate's one of the lowest in the country. Our median income's one of the highest. So what I learned from this, for my 16 years in elected life, working in Richmond and working as governor, is if you really focus on talent, on education, if you focus on job skills and job training, if you do that and you grow your own talent, then you attract talent, people from around the country and even around the world, and then you also attract the businesses that want to be near talent. I was over in Danville earlier today. A deal that I did in Danville was the Swedish furniture manufacturing company IKEA that sells furniture, that sells furniture all over the world, but they had never had a manufacturing plant in Virginia, in the United States. Even though they sell a lot of furniture here, they've been producing it in Poland and shipping it here. When I was governor, they built a manufacturing facility in Danville that's open now, and they picked Danville because there was a lot of manufacturing talent in Danville. So talent comes in different kinds. Some of it is the college degree, some of it is manufacturing, some of it might be ag and forestry, but you got to have talent if you want to be successful in today's world. So now I'm going to tell you at the national level what the problem is. And this troubles me, and it ought to trouble all of us as Americans. We were the most talented nation in the world for a long time. If you measure it by the percentage of adults who have some kind of a college degree, 2-year degree, 4-year degree, technical degree, we were number one in the world. And we were number one in the world for this reason. After World War II, in order to honor the veterans of the war, we put in the GI Bill. Harry Truman put it in, got passed, and all those folks who had served in World War II could come back and then have educational opportunities. And the U.S. wasn't number one in the world in college attendance or anything before that. Europe was ahead of us, but we raced ahead, and then our economy got very strong. The second half of the 20th century was sort of the American, era, and our economy was so very, very strong because on the education side, nobody was close to us. But here's the problem. Today, would you believe that in this age group, the 20 to 30-year-olds, who are the age group, most likely to get those degrees after high school, we're number 16 in the world. We slipped. We grew for a while, and then we flattened out, and now we're kind of declining. But other nations are still climbing, so not only are we 16th in the world today, but because other nations are still climbing, we could easily be 25th in the world or 30th in the world in 15 or 20 years in the percentage of our young adults who are getting the skills that they need to be successful in this really tough global economy. And I think about this, and I'm sure most of you, we've got educators in this room and people who care passionately about education. I really believe if we solve every other issue, if we wave a magic wand and the federal budget is balanced tomorrow, if we solve every other issue, but we keep losing on that talent work, we keep slipping from 1st to 16th and 16th to 25th, then we're not going to have the kind of future that we want. We've got to make sure that our kids and our grandkids and that the young people in the communities we all live in have opportunities to be all they can be. When we hold talent back, then we don't succeed. But when we raise it, we all succeed, right? And so what I want to do is I want to go into the Senate and focus on what I call talent policy. Education, when I was governor, I had to cut $5 billion out of the state budget, more than anybody's cut, because I was governor in the worst recession in 70 years. But we increased, not decreased, we increased the number of kids who were in early childhood, pre-K classrooms around Virginia. Because if you can get children started early so that when they hit kindergarten, they're just raring to go, then you can pretty much just watch them go and watch them grow and watch them succeed. We expanded higher education institutions in Virginia, every community college and every four-year public institution with investments to help them add classrooms and labs. In 2008, we passed a bill, worked on together, $1.4 billion worth of construction on our higher ed institutions. And it was a tough economy, and it was a tough time, and I got questions, why are you doing this? The economy's tough. I said, I'm doing it because the economy's tough. I'm doing it because if we can do construction, that can employ people, but more importantly, we can also help folks get skills to grow and learn. And so that's what I want to do. I don't want the U.S. to be 16th in the world or 35th in the world in talent. I want us to be number one in talent. And that's what I want to do if I go to the U.S. Senate. There's one other thing I want to do, and it's also about talent, and it's really important. There's a special kind of talent that Virginia probably knows better than just about any state, and that is military and veterans. We are so connected to the military and veteran community in Virginia. In fact, here's a statistic. When I first heard this, it kind of surprised me. There's about 7.5 million Virginians. There's over 800,000 veterans. So more than 1 in 10 Virginian is a veteran. Not 1 in 10 adults. Birth to 99, 1 in 10, more than 1 in 10 are veterans. And then if you take veterans' families, and active duty military and their families, and Guard and Reserve and their families, and the civilians who work for the Department of Defense and their families, and the contractors who do contracting work with the Department of Defense and their families, you're not talking about 1 in 10 anymore. You're talking about probably 1 in 3 Virginians have a very direct connection to military and veterans. And it's a really important part of talent. The people who serve, who will put it all on the line to keep the nation safe, that's a kind of talent that we need to recruit, equip, train, reward, provide the right benefits and pay for, because you want to make sure that that kind of talent is strong enough with the equipment and tools and training enough to keep the nation safe, and also with the kind of benefits that they ought to be entitled to because of the sacrifice that they're making. And raise your hand if you're a veteran in the room. We have some veterans in the room? Yep, okay, we do. We've got veteran in the room. Here's the neat thing.
But my father was in World War I.
Wow.
And my grandson is at the Air Force Academy Prep School.
You have a grandson at the Air Force Academy Prep School. That is fantastic.
And my former husband is a retired Army person.
Retired Army. I have a son. Who just graduated from Officer Candidate School at Quantico to become a Marine officer, and so we are connected. But here's the really important thing about veterans and talent. Once veterans have served and they leave the military, of course, veterans go into every line of work possible: public safety, teaching, business, elected office, the ministry. I mean, there's not a single field that veterans don't go into. And veterans have a really important kind of talent because they've been trained in leadership skills. They have talent. They fan out into every last part of every community, and they do everything. And it's important that that talent be recognized and that we honor our commitments to veterans. I meet with groups of veterans around the state, and boy, it's kind of heartbreaking. Somebody said this to me: I served and I was on the team. Then as soon as I was a veteran and I was going to the VA to try to get service, they acted like I was on a different team. Like, well, maybe this didn't have to do with your military service, or maybe you're trying to make this up. And to serve and be on the team and then be treated like you're on a different team, boy, how challenging and tough that is for people who have done that service. So what I hope to do in the Senate is focus on the talent issues of education and workforce development, but I also want to spend time on the talent of those who have served and those who are serving, because that's so important to Virginia. I'll say one last thing, tell you about how the race is looking, and then I'd love to open it up and take a question or two. And I see there's some cake over there. I mean, I might have a piece of cake too, so, and I think we can all do that together before I go. The race is going to be very close. Right now, the polls would suggest that the president's race in Virginia is a dead heat, and that my race in Virginia is a dead heat. And that's because Virginia is a battleground state. Now, boy, it's great to be a battleground state, because for a long time, we weren't anybody's battleground state. You know, we hadn't produced a win for a Democratic candidate in a presidential race in Virginia since 1964. Nobody thought we were a battleground. But in 2008, President Obama said, well, it may have been a long time since any Democrat invested in Virginia, but I'm going to invest in Virginia. And when he did, it paid off, and we worked all very hard, and he was successful. And now both parties, and this is good, both parties look at Virginia and say, this is a battleground state. So both presidential tickets, President Obama and Vice President Biden, and the Republican nominee and their vice presidential nominee, both sets of candidates will be doing a lot of work in Virginia, just like it was in 2008. They're not going to take us for granted anymore. But that means the race will be very, very close. I'm a specialist in close races. I've run 7 races, and I've won 7 races. A couple of races for city council I was unopposed, but any time I've been opposed, I've barely won. I've not gotten more than 53% of the vote in any race that I've been in. But I've not lost one, and I'm not going to lose this one. But it's going to be very, very close. Now, we all know the way to win close races. The way to win close races, the other guys can sometimes run more TV ads, but the way to win close races is person to person. That's how you win a close race. So we're going to rely very heavily on volunteers and on grassroots effort. I learned that when I was a city councilman. My first race, I didn't have to raise much money. I just had to knock on every door. And so I learned it was about person to person. Well, I can't knock on every door with 7.5 million Virginians, but with great volunteers and people like you who are willing to go out and work for me and for the president, we can win this race. I think it'll be close, it'll be tough, but I feel very, very good about our chances to win. So help your local committee. So George got the Emporia Greensville committee here, and we've got other committee chairs from surrounding counties. I'll be coming back and doing more events, and I'll look to that. But if you are here to volunteer, make sure you're volunteering with the local committee. There will be presence both from the Obama campaign and my campaign in the area, and opportunities to volunteer there as well. We will work in as coordinated a fashion as we can, aware of what each other's doing, helping each other out. I think I've got sign-up sheets right here at the door where you can sign up for me or the committee to make sure you volunteer. And also, I've also got sign-up sheets to get on the ballot. You know, some Republican presidential candidates found that it's actually hard to get on a ballot in Virginia. 10,000 signatures is a lot of signatures. And we're gathering them as we go. But if you could sign before you go, that would be really helpful. Thanks again for coming. I know everybody's busy. I know everybody's got a lot to do. And we're 8 months before election. But the way to win is to start early, work hard. I feel good about the race. I feel good about continuing to work together. And so, again, Delegate Tyler for hosting us tonight, for your great service, and all of you for coming and being part of it. I really appreciate it. And with that, I will stop. Maybe I'll take George, maybe I'll just take a question or two, but then we can go back and just mingle and visit. So, all right, thank you all very much. Great to be with you.
What impact do you think the recent bill that has come through the General Assembly regarding voters' ID will have on this election?
I'm nervous about it, Rufus. I really am. Without any history or any proof of voter fraud or problems in Virginia, as soon as the other side got majority in the Senate with the Lieutenant Governor's tiebreaker, one of the first things they wanted to push through was, we want to make it harder for people to vote. And that tells you something about them. It tells you something about their intention. We want to make it harder for people to vote. One of the things I like about my own party is we want people to vote, and the other side seems to want to restrict it. And so I'm worried about it. And I think we need to do 2 things. First, we need to take all these voting restrictions and do any lobbying we can with the Justice Department to take a look at them to make sure that there isn't some motive behind them that would suggest that these laws should not go into effect. These are changes in election laws because Virginia is a state that's covered by the Voting Rights Act. This is something that we need to ask the Justice Department to take a look at all of them, and ask really, was there really any need to do these bills? But second, we're going to have to do a lot of education. We're going to have to really start probably, once the dust settles and the session is over and the governor has signed all the bills, we are really going to have to start reminding people this November is critically important, and when you come to the poll, you're going to need one of the following 5 things. And really, we've got to spread that word wide. I know the Obama campaign in Virginia is looking very seriously at that, about educating, and we're going to do the same thing, and we'll need to rely a lot on local committees as well to get that word out. Other questions? Please, I'm going to come here and then here. Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask about the current Congress, the current Senate, the current House, and all the contention and all the unwillingness to compromise.
It's just a disaster. And you saw, it's pretty much as soon after the inauguration of the president, people saying, well, our goal is to make the president a one-term president.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And it wasn't jobs, it wasn't America's place in the world, it wasn't educational opportunities. Well, our goal is to make the president a one-term president. And I'm not a Republican. My father-in-law was a Republican, and he was a wonderful public servant. He's my role model in public life. He would never have said that the goal of his party was to stop somebody else. He always had a goal for his party that was a good goal, that was something positive, that was something we could do. And so when you see people just adopting as their goal to block progress, and it's more important to block progress even if it hurts the nation than to let someone be successful in office, well, that tells us that we've got to have a change. I don't think the change happens easily in the House, because the House, 435 people who serve for 2-year terms, the House has always operated on a kind of a partisan basis. Whoever is the majority party kind of does what they want to do, and then the minority party works to get a majority. But it ought to work different in the Senate. The Senate was set up 100 people, 6-year terms, supposed to get to know one another. It's not supposed to be so partisan. So in some ways, the Senate might have strayed more from what they're supposed to do than the House. And when you see the Senate filibustering everything, the kinds of things that are happening there, we got to have people in who know how to work together. I will say this: I have my strengths and weaknesses. I do know how to work with people of all different points of view. I got chosen to be mayor of Richmond because I know how to work with people. I was governor with 2 Republican houses my first 2 years and 1 each my second 2. We were Forbes' most business-friendly state, #1 out of 50, all 4 years. We were Education Week's best place for a child to be born to have a successful life. We were Governing Magazine's best managed state in America. I would like to say that was because you had a great governor, but that would not be fair. The right thing to say is we knew how to work together. We knew how to work together, Democrats and Republicans. I didn't agree with Republicans on everything when I was governor, but if we disagreed on something today, then by gosh, I'd find something tomorrow we could agree on. I didn't dwell on the disagreement, and I didn't raise all these kind of divisive social issues. Here's what's happening in Richmond that is a real problem. These issues that are turning Virginia into a joke on Saturday Night Live and on these TV shows, I think they're the wrong issues for 2 reasons. First, they're the wrong issues because it's wrong to try to make it harder for people to vote. It's wrong to try to put legislators in the middle of women's health care choices. Those are the wrong things to do. But the other thing that's wrong about it is when you focus on those issues rather than building the economy or improving education, you guarantee that people are going to go into their corners. If you pick the divisive issues to focus on, then you guarantee that people will divide. And we don't need more division in this country. We need more working together. So that's why we need to pick the issues around which we can work together. I think talent is one of those issues. I think support for military and veterans is one of those issues. And I think being optimistic and positive rather than bashing the president and being negative is a way to get people to come together rather than divide them. Please.
I'm glad you spoke about education. I'm an educator, and what are your views about the current conversation of doing away with tenured teachers' contracts?
I don't see how that's going to be the solution to any of the problems we have. I really don't. I don't think the problem we have is teachers get continuing contracts. In Virginia, teachers get continuing contracts if they teach for a probationary period. But from my experience, I was mayor in Richmond, and we had a public school system, and I would go to a public school pretty much every Tuesday morning during the time I was mayor. If a teacher was bad, you could take steps to remove a teacher. One thing we didn't have in Virginia that wasn't very good is we didn't have good teacher evaluations. And if you're going to use people's performance either to promote them or to discipline them or even let them go if they need it. You need to have a good evaluation mechanism. And so you put that in place. But I don't think the problem with our education system is the contract rules for teachers. I don't think that's the problem. There's reforms we have to make, and you know, I think some of the reforms might even be into the education schools and training of teachers and things like that, but it's not the contract status that's causing us to slip. There are other factors that are much more important. If you're going to talk about reform, other things that are much more important to reform, I think. Okay, maybe one more question, and then we'll just go and visit and have fun. Yeah, please, ma'am.
In terms of health care, how do you envision improving access in rural areas and in promoting teach nursing education for future nurses?
Well, this is one where I would love to spend more time talking to make sure that I know what I need to in this. You know, we worked on some measures together because Delegate Tyler brought to my attention when I was governor the fact that, you know, if you want to have a baby born here, I mean, are there any? Yeah, you don't have a birthing center, so we worked together to try to come up with
I
money.
know, they're close.
Yeah. So you got to travel a ways to have a baby. And look, if you have a regular pregnancy and you kind of know when the delivery is, that's one thing. But what if you have an emergency? You know, what if a baby comes early? My oldest son was born 6.5 weeks early. That was not what we expected. So if you're not able to plan it, it's really tough. If there's no OB deliveries in your community. The Affordable Care Act did some good things for rural health care, for the community, the federally recognized community health centers got significant funding increases under the Affordable Care Act. Those centers generally serve rural America, and so there was some funding for rural America in that. On the nursing side, nursing training was something that I definitely worked on as governor. We had a real nursing shortage in the state, and one of the reasons that we did is we had a shortage of nursing instructors. And the reason we had a shortage of nursing instructors is that so many people would go to nursing and actually they could make a better salary as a nurse than an instructor, so we didn't have that many instructors. And that was creating a real choke point in having enough nurses. So we tried to do some things to elevate the salaries of nursing instructors at our state institutions. I'm real proud of the fact that the person who is running Medicaid and Medicare now for the federal government, and it's the second largest line item after defense in the federal government, is a Virginian who grew up in Bassett, Virginia, in Southside, who was a nurse, Marilyn Tavner. Marilyn Tavner became my HHS secretary when I was governor, but she started as a nurse. And she is now in charge of Medicaid and Medicare for the United States, and she was picked because since she started as a nurse, she understood about patient quality and about access in rural Virginia, because that's where she came from in rural America. So we've got a leader now running Medicaid and Medicare who I think has some understanding for it. The Affordable Care Act has some money for the federally chartered community health centers. That's great. But I know there's a lot of issues on rural access that I would love to, maybe have some additional dialogue with those of you who really are experts on that, because that's something that I could stand to learn more about. Let me just say thank you. I'm really happy that you came, because again, I know everybody's busy. There's a million things you could do tonight. It's Saturday, but you've come here to, I'm sure, to show not just that you want to help me out, and I feel great about that, but you want to make sure that 2012 is a successful year, top to bottom. Presidential re-election, my race, congressional races. It will be a big, tough, and challenging year, but we know how to do it. This is not doing anything we don't know how to do. This is doing something we do know how to do, because we just did it a couple years ago, and we're going to do it again in 2012. Thank you all so much.
If I could have everyone's attention, please. Governor Kane, thank you very much for realizing that Southside Virginia is here, like a lot of candidates forget about it. But we appreciate this, because now we know you know where we are, and we can find you too. We appreciate that, and we soon hope to be able to change that title from governor to senator.
Absolutely.
If I may, unfortunately, I forget this every single time. Somebody always has, comes in late, or we forget to announce you or recognize you. My apologies, but again, thank you, Celine, for remembering to give me these names. We have with us this evening the 4th Congressional candidate, Mr. Joe Elliott. Joe, could you wave? Nice to have you. We have a member of the Brunswick County School Board, the Honorable Timothy Perrier. Timothy. We we have the St. Paul's College Young Democrats President, Brittany Battle. Brittany. And last but not least, we have the 5th Congressional District Democratic Committee, 2nd Vice President and Democratic Party of Virginia Central Committee, Celine Montgomery.
Yay.
And finally, last but not least, Delegate Tyler, we want to thank you for allowing us to use your space. We appreciate that. Sometimes that's all I've got, and there's cake and punch, and please don't leave any of it or else I have to take it home. Thank you all. Appreciate it.